As fun as it is to go star hunting, a more quote unquote boring offseason might be the best route for the Sacramento Kings and new general manager Scott Perry. I'll break that down, plus talk about the the latest names that the Kings have been connected to for their vacant point guard position. It's all right here for you on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all offseason long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter at ABC 10 News. And we've had fun over the last few weeks talking about Trae Young or Ja Morant or LaMelo Ball, right? All names that potentially could be available, names that in theory there have been whispers of, at least in the case of Trae Young, connections between the Kings organization and the Hawks involving Trae. And I do think the Kings should absolutely be involved in most every star conversation to some extent, right? Involvement could just be picking up the phone and at least having a conversation about it, right? The possibility of Giannis Antetokounmpo being a Sacramento King is very, very low, like little to none. But if Giannis suddenly were to become available or the Bucks were to start shopping Giannis, like Scott Perry would be doing a disservice not to at least pick up the phone and have very preliminary conversations of what realm that deal could possibly get done, right? So I'm not saying, hey, the Kings need to bow out of all star conversations. Don't go that route. Go the more boring route. I just think it makes a lot more sense for Scott Perry specifically, because we got to separate Scott Perry, who's stepping into this job for the first time, separate ourselves from Scott, because you know me, I've talked about on this podcast, like I need something to be excited about again, right? I need something to be invested in again. And the idea of having another star here in Sacramento to get me in the building and get me excited and get me to talk about it extensively here on Locked On Kings, of course, that would be ideal. But for Scott Perry, he's not bringing in the baggage or the frustrations of last season or the one playoff season in the last 19, right? Like or 18. He is coming in. It's a fresh start, and he is operating with, at least from my understanding, the belief that time is on his side. Again, our patience might be low, but Perry's patience level should be high. Like, Perry does not take this job in Sacramento if he doesn't feel like he has the time and the freedom to do it right. Now, ultimately, time will tell if his right way actually ends up being the right way. But Perry does not need to step into this role here in Sacramento and treat it the same way whoever becomes the next head coach of the New York Knicks has to step into that role and essentially deliver that city and that organization to championship. Those expectations far different from the expectations of Scott Perry. Now, my and your expectations from the Kings fan standpoint is, yes, be competitive again. We don't want a long playoff drought. Get us back into the postseason. Then once you get there, actually build upon it. But that doesn't mean that has to be done starting next season. If it started quickly, if the Kings turned themselves around very quickly, of course, that would be phenomenal and more than worth celebrating. But that's not the expectation. Kind of a very similar position to how Mike Brown came in as the head coach of the Sacramento Kings. Looking at this roster, the key pieces of this roster, the Zach LaVines, DeMar DeRozans, Domantas Sabonis's, that suggests that, assuming at least two of those three are going to still be here, the Kings should still be competitive. What I mean by that is They should be able to beat anybody on any given night. They should be a team that fights for a 500 record or hover around that 500 record point. A team that is in the postseason conversation with the expectation that the way they get there is through the play-in tournament. And while I've talked extensively about how being in the middle is not a great place for the Sacramento Kings to be, it's kind of a position that they've put themselves in roster-wise with the moves that they made last season before Scott Perry took over the job. Again, he's inheriting this. He's inheriting the mess, but brings a new level of patience. So ultimately, it's about priorities. The Kings' priorities, Scott Perry's priorities, and I guess by proxy, Doug Christie, their priorities have to be right. To me, what this offseason and next season needs to be about is establishing your culture and identifying the Doug Christie / Scott Perry guys. Getting that, establishing that, I think is far more important for the Kings next season than making the playoffs. Now, there's a way that those things can be synonymous. You establish that identity, you do make the playoffs. And again, that's what all of us are rooting for and hoping for. But I don't think it's what we should expect at this point. So I say boring. And of course, boring has a negative connotation. I use it in air quotes in the title and in the thumbnail very, very intentionally. Because a boring offseason, not making a big move on draft night, turning DeMar DeRozan into one or two role players, right? That might not be the best for the content here on Locked On Kings. That might not be the best for your conversations around the water cooler at work with your fellow Kings fans. You're not going to see it talked about on ESPN. But it might be the right first step, albeit a small first step, to Perry establishing that culture and establishing that identity. I want something to capture my attention. I want something to make me believe in the Sacramento Kings again. I think a lot of us feel the same way. But I'll tell you this. As much fun as I had covering the Kings in the playoffs, and I would love to do that again, not just with the feeling of like being back at the Golden One Center for a game 1 or game 3 or whatever it would be in the first round, but feeling like, okay, the Kings are here, they belong here, and now they're going to stay here for the foreseeable future. The way we felt about the Sacramento Kings 2 years ago, even when they lost to the Warriors in the playoffs, we felt like, okay, the Kings have finally arrived. We can get used to this. We know how it played out. So if this team can get back to the playoffs and feel like they're actually going to sustain playoff success, and by that I mean building upon a first-round playoff exit if that were to happen again, I'm all for that, of course. But truthfully, what might honestly make me the most excited next season, not long term, but for next season, is if you told me, Matt, the Kings are going to win 38 games next season. But as the season goes on, we're going to see a team that is kind of directionless, kind of disjointed, has a lot of big names, but we don't know how they all mesh, turn into a group that plays hard, that has an identity, that clearly has a direction to where, be it the trade deadline or the offseason a year from now, Scott Perry can go, the foundation is here. I know exactly what I need to build on it. Now I'm going to use my draft picks. Now I'm going to use Zach LaVine's expiring contract or one less year of Domantas Sabonis' contract or Malik Monk or whoever. I'm going to go and use those assets that I have to go and get what I need. Right now, the Kings need a lot. And there's just no way Scott Perry can address it all this offseason. So you prioritize. Prioritize, of course, getting a point guard because the Kings need point guard depth. Prioritize finding some wing help for Keegan Murray, some forwards, some guys that are 6'8", 6'9", 6'10" on this roster, please God. But ultimately, prioritize establishing the identity, identifying which players on this roster currently fit that identity, which players don't, and what players out there that are potentially available that could come in and not just fit the identity, but embrace the identity. There are 3 names, more on the boring side than a Trae Young, that the Kings have been connected to. I'll run through those 3 names, talk about each one, the pros and cons of each one, how they fit, how they don't, which of the 3 I would like the Kings to go out and get if I had to choose between the 3 of them. That's all coming up here next on Locked On Kings. This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where the heck did all my money go? I know I'm not alone in that. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just another budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and actually start building some wealth. You'll get some surprise insights, like when you start using Monarch Money, it'll break down for you where your money is going specifically, how much you're spending on food delivery or entertainment or your favorite coffee shop or whatever it may be. The all-in-one convenience is incredible, right? Instead of juggling multiple apps and Microsoft Excel spreadsheets and different folders on your computer at home, all you do is go to the Monarch Money app. You can check your finances, track your spending, even plan long-term goals, all in the same place. And collaboration is really easy too, right? Whether you have joint bank accounts or separate bank accounts, managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can set goals and ultimately stay on the same page without any of the added stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. 3 names that the Sacramento Kings have been connected to: Drew Holiday, Marcus Smart, and Malcolm Brogdon. Again, if those 3 names get a yawn out of you, I get it, especially if you are in the camp of go get Trae Young. Screw it. Let's have some fun. By the way, I feel very, 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 trust me on this, very confident that's not going to happen for a very obvious reason. The person who's making that decision, or who would make that decision, is not a fan of that decision. So they're not going to make it. Right. And I feel very confident in that. So I think the Trae Young ship has sailed. But maybe you're like, hey, go get LaMelo Ball. Go get player X that's a star that at least will sell some tickets. I feel you. If that's how you are, I don't blame you necessarily for that. These 3 names are not nearly as exciting, but all 3 of them maybe fit more into what we were talking about the last segment, right? Establishing the culture, the direction, more of a boring move that helps kind of get the ball rolling. Start with Drew Holiday, right? Drew's a little bit different than the other 2. One of the major areas that he's different is the amount of money that he's making. He's owed $32 million next season, $34.8 million the following season, and then the final year of his deal is a $37 million player option. He's going to exercise that. So we're talking a 3-year and pretty hefty financial commitment to Drew Holiday. Getting Holiday would suggest that the Kings are still fighting hard to be in the mix. Like, you don't get Drew Holiday and expect to not take some sort of step forward. Now we have to be realistic in what that step forward is, right? We saw how big of an impact Drew Holiday made when he was on the Milwaukee Bucks, when he joined the Boston Celtics initially, how big he was for them right away. I do think he'd make an immediate noticeable positive impact for the Sacramento Kings, not nearly to the extent that we saw in those other 2 places, right? It just comes from being a little bit older. But you acquire Drew Holiday, you're essentially saying, yeah, we're fighting for a 6th seed. And the Kings probably feel that they're doing that anyway. Drew just more solidifies that. We don't want to be a play-in team. We're going for a 6th seed. We need a point guard. Here's a veteran that we know locks down on the defensive end, has been there and done that before, and he can help us get to that goal and accomplish that goal and get us back to the playoffs. I get it. I wouldn't do it, probably, but I get it. Plus, his veteran leadership for this team would be fantastic, right? You talk about a guy that comes in and unlike, you remember JaVale McGee was here for a year, and I'm not disrespecting JaVale McGee and his leadership or Jay Crowder last year. Those guys are important for the locker room and were very well respected and liked and brought valuable experience to that, at the time, young locker room. It's not young anymore. But Drew Holiday is on a little bit different of a level. In fact, a lot of it different of a level than those guys. You mean to tell me Keon Ellis and Devin Carter couldn't learn a boatload from Drew Holiday, right? That I think he would be phenomenal for the two of them. I think Drew Holiday would be an excellent extension of Doug Christie as a head coach on the floor. The thing is, you're investing a lot of money and now 3 years into that, right? That's a nice bonus. But if that's primarily what you're looking for out of Drew, or after a year, it's okay, Drew's more of a locker room veteran leader than he is an on-court contributor, it's not a good investment, right? You're spending too much money. And I would feel like if you went out and acquired Drew Holiday, maybe it's good for a year, but think you just run into the same problem of having to then move on from Drew around the same time that you're making your decisions on Zach LaVine and Domantas Sabonis if you try and move on from one or both of those guys. So out of the three names, Drew's the best player. Out of the three names, Drew's going to make the most positive winning impact on the floor right away for the Kings. But for the direction that I feel the Kings want to go in or should go in, I don't know if Drew makes the most sense. Marcus Smart, he's in the final year of his deal. He's owed $21.5 million next year. This is a much better price point and a much shorter term commitment for that leadership and culture establishing role that we kind of talked about with Drew. Like, Drew's a better player than Marcus Smart. Drew would impact winning more than Marcus Smart in Sacramento. No doubt in my mind about that. But Marcus can still help this team on the floor. You commit to him for a year. And just like with Drew, I think Marcus could have a very, very positive impact on Devin Carter, Keon Ellis, and the other young players on this Sacramento Kings roster. Less of a financial commitment, less of a long-term commitment than Drew, but still getting that veteran locker room presence. To me, Marcus Smart makes a ton of sense for you. Talking about a guy that like Doug Christie as a coach can go like, you're an extension of me. You're a voice. You're kind of a leader. I'm leaning on you for this. Like, Marcus Smart makes a ton of sense, I think, for a role like that. It's easy to imagine Marcus Smart being a Doug Christie guy. Of course, if things go well, he's an expiring contract. You can always re-sign him for another short-term veteran deal if you want to. Keep him beyond just this next season, but you're not immediately obligated to that the same way you would be in Drew Holiday situations. The questions, though, for me, like, he's your starting point guard. Like, I know he did well in a starting role with those responsibilities in Boston for many years, but I don't feel super confident in Marcus Smart's ability to step into a starting point guard role here in Sacramento and hold that position down to the level that maybe the Kings are looking for. But if that's the short-term solution, Marcus Smart is definitely not a bad option, and I don't think it would cost the Kings that much to get him from the Washington Wizards. Finally, Malcolm Brogdon. He is a free agent, so this is different. The Kings don't have to trade for him necessarily, unless, of course, it's a sign and trade situation, but I don't think we'd have to worry about that. He made $22.5 million last season. He's not going to be worth that same amount this season. Unless his value, though, like, plummets significantly right now financially, I just don't know how the Kings can afford to sign him. They would have to make another move, or they would have to do something else to free up the space to be able to go out and get Malcolm Brogdon. Brogdon was at his best as a sixth man back in the 2022-2023 season. He was really, really good coming off the bench. And out of these three names, if you're looking for like a scoring punch, out of the three names, Malcolm Brogdon is the best one. So if you're looking for a point guard to take over a lot of offensive and scoring responsibilities, out of these three, Malcolm's probably your guy. He did have a bad year shooting the basketball, though, last season. He's a career 38% three-point shooter. That part's great. He shot 28% from three last season. That part, not good at all. And over the last 2 seasons, he's been banged up a lot. He played 39 games and 24 games over the last 2 seasons. So depending upon how much money you throw his way to get him to sign, there is the question of how much is he actually going to play. And that plus like his reputation as being the best coming off the bench, like why go that route when Malik Monk's on your roster? Like, I don't think I would go the Malcolm Brogdon route, because as much as I feel pretty confident that Malik is not a good long-term option for the Kings at the point guard position, we saw it. It didn't really work out. And I don't know if Malik Monk's going to be on the team next year. We've talked a lot about how valuable his contract is this offseason, how movable that contract is. So maybe Malik Monk isn't even here. But as of now, Malik Monk's on this roster. Bringing in Malcolm Brogdon with Malik still here feels a bit redundant to me. So if Malik is a Sacramento King, I don't think there's a need for Malcolm Brogdon. You move on from Malik Monk, though, and maybe you free up some money in the deal that you have moved Malik Monk for. Malcolm Brogdon might not be a bad option in the free agency market for Scott Perry to consider. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are nearly over. I know it's sad. We got game 5 of the NBA Finals tonight, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot like we saw from Tyrese in Game 1, a breakout player, whatever it may be. There's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game. Before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big, whether you're betting on the players showing up in big moments, Tyrese Halliburton and his numbers in the fourth quarter, or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the amount of times he gets to the foul line over the course of the game, or the big fourth quarter that he had for the Thunder to win in Game 4. You can bet on all of that and make money on all that. Plus, how about a $200 bonus in bonus bets? That adds a lot of excitement. You win that first $5 bet, right? Put $5 on the easiest bet you can find. Doesn't matter what the return is. You win that bet. Here's $200 in bonus bets for you to really have some fun and make some money on FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. Again, if you win, it's $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. So we had a huge blockbuster trade in the NBA over the weekend. Not the one that I think everybody is anxiously awaiting, which is what happens with Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns, but a blockbuster nonetheless. Nonetheless, we were questioning, like, what were the Memphis Grizzlies going to do? Were they going to trade Ja Morant? Well, they didn't trade Ja. They traded Desmond Bane to the Orlando Magic, and the Magic paid a hefty price for Bane, in addition to, like, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 4 first-round picks plus pick swaps on top of that. A hefty price to pay for a very talented young player and scoring punch in Desmond Bane. First and foremost, I appreciate and I admire the Orlando Magic. They're going for it, right? They were a really fun team last season. Paolo Banchero, star. Franz Wagner, star. The way they play on the defensive end, very physical. Desmond Bane, I think, can embrace that coming from Memphis. And he adds the offense and the scoring that Orlando desperately needs. 4 first-round picks and pick swaps on top of that is scary. You're going all in. You are investing your future. But you're not investing your future on a 31-year-old, right? You're investing your future on someone who fits the core age and timeline of your organization, and he's under contract for the next handful of seasons. So I like this move for Orlando a lot. Matt, why are you talking about it on the Locked On Kings podcast? Well, sorry, you're going to probably regret asking that question, and Kings fans might get mad at me over the next couple of minutes, but it's worth talking about. It goes to show that all it takes is one team to set a player's market, right? Like, I don't know how many teams around the league would have given up 4 first-round picks for Desmond Bane, but the Grizzlies got it anyway because the Orlando Magic feel that their missing piece, what they need to ultimately accomplish their goals as a franchise, is Desmond Bane, and they went out and paid the price that they needed to pay and they felt was worth it to go out and get him. Right? Just goes to show the market can change, and even if we would establish someone's value as this or that based off of other trades in the league and how good we think the player is, what matters is how badly does one team want them and how much are they willing to give up. That is the value of that player. Right? We saw it even with the Minnesota Timberwolves and what they gave up to go out and get Rudy Gobert. It's frustrating to see this trade and acknowledge that the Grizzlies got a boatload more for Desmond Bane than the Sacramento Kings got for De'Aaron Fox. I think Grizzlies fans would argue this, and maybe general NBA fans would argue this, but I think De'Aaron Fox is a better player than Desmond Bane. And the Kings got Zach LaVine and bad draft picks for De'Aaron, or at least questionable draft picks for De'Aaron. There's really no point in rehashing that because the value is what it is, right? It's who they have. But it's hard to not feel like the Kings could have and very likely would have done much better in a De'Aaron Fox trade had they waited until the offseason. That curiosity will hang with me for a very long time. The same way we're curious, what would the Kings have looked like if they drafted Luka? What would the Kings have looked like if they traded De'Aaron instead of Tyrese Halliburton? I think this will linger. What would the Kings have gotten for De'Aaron Fox if they had waited for the offseason, waited for the context of every other team around the league and how their playoff runs went, and waited for Scott Perry, an established, respected general manager who has connections with everybody, not just around the league, but around the world of sports, right? What could he have done with De'Aaron Fox? What could he have turned De'Aaron Fox into? I'm not saying he would have gotten that Desmond Bane type package for De'Aaron, but I'm very confident Perry would have gotten a whole heck of a lot more than what he got, or rather what the Kings got, what Monty McNair got for De'Aaron Fox back at the trade deadline. Mad, enough of that. Sour grapes, move on, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, guys. It's going to be hard to move on from that for a while. No, what would help them move on from that, though, is winning basketball games and getting back on track. Hopefully Scott Perry can do that. Want to hear your thoughts on going the boring route versus a big swing star hunt type move? Which side of the fence do you lean on? Hit me up at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.